and welcome to Sonic Bytes, the freewheeling conversation and interview series for the eclectic music lover. This week, we're super excited to have Aidan Bricker on the show, also known as the Happy Bluesman. Aidan's a guitarist and teacher from the UK who's recently taken on Leo as a guitar student. An aficionado of blues guitar music through and through, Aidan picked up a guitar at a young age and juggled playing music with high-performance sports and other jobs, before committing to teaching guitar and running his website full-time. We had such a great time in this episode chatting about his musical journey, from the process of learning guitar, his influences growing up, teaching philosophies, his go-to gear, and much more. It was such fun to chat to someone outside of our immediate creative circle, especially someone who loves a lot of the same players and styles as us, as fellow guitar players. Do check out Aidan's website, happybluesman.com, to keep up with his latest articles and posts, which we'll link in the description below. As a blues guitar lover myself, I'm really looking forward to using the website as a resource going forward. And I'm really looking forward to checking out the back catalogue of articles and discover some new tips on blues players, while revisiting some of my very formative players and music in the process. If you're enjoying the podcast, make sure to follow Sonic Bytes on Spotify, Apple, or Stitcher, or like the video and subscribe to the channel on YouTube, as it really helps support the show. We've got only a few more episodes until the end of the year before we wrap up Season 1 and get ready for Season 2. So stay tuned for our little end of the year review episodes coming in December. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Anyway, enough about me. This is about
we have
a guest on the podcast.
Yes. So obviously we met. I was looking for a guitar teacher over the summer because I felt that my playing had sort of hit a bit of a rut in lockdown, and I was kind of doing the same things over and over again. I wasn't really feeling like I was progressing very much. And Aidan, you got in contact with me, and so you've been my guitar teacher since, I think is it September we started?
I think it was maybe a bit earlier, like mid-August or August,
Yeah.
I think. Yes, around that time anyway, yeah.
The lessons have been on Tuesday at 7:00, and the light was like, it was still light when we started having the lessons, and it's now like very much dark by 7:00. So we've been going for a fair while, but yeah, just to give the context of like obviously how we met and everying. But how did you get? Because normally when we talk, the roles are kind of reversed, and you're teaching me things. So it's really strange. It's really strange to have it this way, and maybe asking the questions for a change. But I've never actually asked like how you got into guitar and sort of like what got you to the point where you're teaching full time now.
Yeah, sure. So my introduction to music was actually similar to yours in a way, Johnny. I got started on violin when I was very young, like 4 or 5.
Right.
Because I think I'd gone to, something in like nursery, and the teachers had said, oh, he has like a bit of a sense of rhythm. It might be worth getting him started on something. So I started on violin, and I think the violin is one of the most incredible instruments ever. I just think it is the most beautiful, expressive, just awesome.
Sure.
But I also think it's absolutely savagely difficult to learn to play. I just think fretless instruments, it's just the whole, as well as the complexity of the bowing arm and everything. And I just never really, it always felt like a bit of a struggle trying to learn. And I think even from like the age of 7 or 8, I kind of had a bit of a hankering for the guitar. Like there was a really small guitar in the house. I don't know, like a kid's guitar, and I really wanted to play that. And then, so when I was 11, I got started on the guitar. So I'd had some lessons, and I was still playing the violin. But then I got really into the guitar quite quickly. And I think because I'd had like I certainly wasn't classically trained, but because I had some background in like, notation, rhythm, music theory, and had sort of a foundation of like musical skill, I was lucky to pick it up fairly quickly. And then I was going through that same sort of teenage thing of like discovering new bands, kind of discovering music for yourself rather than like listening to what your parents have on in the house or whatever.
Sure.
And then I just got super into it basically. So I grew my hair really long. I was wearing Jimi Hendrix t-shirts all the time, and Thin Lizzy, and Iron Maiden, and all this sort of stuff. And it's been a bit of a constant ever since. Basically, it dropped off for a few years when I went to uni. Like I I got really into sport, and I was doing some other bits and bobs. So I like the guitar really dropped off by the wayside. But then when I started working, and I was working in London in a sales role, I just found that, you know, music was like a constant, and I still was playing my guitar, and I kind of missed actually, you know, really playing and practicing as I had done when I was a teenager.
Sure.
And then when I got involved in this really intense job, like it was like a startup company that I'd kind of helped to get off the ground, and that desire to like be playing guitar more and be improving and kind of get deeper into music, you know, started to get quite strong, and then I kind of set up this website on the side of my job, which was all about blues music, which is like my real kind of passion, my musical passion. And then I just decided to sack it all in. So I'd been in this job for 4 years. It was an amazing opportunity, you know, great people. I learned loads, but I just decided, you know, it wasn't my passion. And what I really care about is music, which has been with me like the one constant thing in my life that I've just always, you know, had. Like every day I listen to hours of music. I love talking to people about music. I love playing music. I love seeing other people enjoying playing music, you know. And I just thought, well, let's make a crack at this. So that's when I decided to kind of go full time on the website and teaching, and that's what's led me here.
And now you're on the Zoom call.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's an awesome journey. I mean, it's awesome that you sort of like, because there was this period where you weren't doing it for a bit, and then for it to come back, I think that's sort of a really nice thing, because I feel like a lot of people, they might give up at some point, or if maybe the situation, or maybe even just they're not just vibing with the instrument like the same way the violin you might not be vibing with that at the moment. But yeah, it's awesome to see it like sort of come back, and then it's almost like rediscovering like what made you pick it up in the first place, right?
Yeah, man, exactly, man. And I think it's, you know, it's an interesting one, because I almost think you've got to keep it. This is going to sound intense, but it's almost like a human relationship. You kind of can't take it for granted, and I think you've got to nurture it. Like, you know, if you know, for example, if you get super intense about your practice and you're always hammering yourself and you're always, you know, getting like beating yourself up about that you should be better or whatever, which a lot of people do, I think, you know, you're going to fall out of love with the instrument. Or you know, if you're constantly chopping and changing your direction, and you know, one week you want to be an amazing jazz guitarist, the next week you're going to be, you know, the next, you know, Iron Maiden guy or whatever. You know, all these different things. So it's like, I think it's an amazing thing, but I think you also have to kind of manage your relationship with music and with the guitar or with the piano or whatever it is as well. Because I think you give, you know, when you care about music, you do give a lot of yourself to it as well.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really nice way to frame it. Like I always think back to my musical journey as well, which is the only one I can experience and reflect on. But like going through the stages of different types of instruments and switching instruments, there's always like these sort of lulls or moments where you might not feel as passionate about it, and you're like, I can't get over this hump of like doing a double stop on a violin, or like trying to sound a certain way on the guitar, and you're like I'm never going to achieve it. And then you sort of paddle along a bit, and like you can look back on it and reflect and be like, okay, those moments were really hard, and then somehow you broke through. And I think those breakthrough moments are sort of, they're the most inspiring, and they're sort of the nicest to reflect on, I think.
Yeah, it's those moments as well that sort of they kind of make it all worthwhile as well. In terms of sort of, because if you are in a rut and you are sort of like, you know, like as you said, sort of like struggling for a certain skill or to sound a particular way or to learn a certain song, and then like when you do finally nail it, it's kind of like it makes all of the struggling kind of like worthwhile. I've had it like this. No, sorry.
No, I was gonna say like there are these moments where I'm like trying to learn this tune, like this crazy sort of like maybe a Satriani tune or a Steve Vai tune or something, and you just can't play it one day, and then you go to bed and you wake up the next day. I don't know if you guys have experienced this. You wake up the next day and you try and do it again, and somehow overnight, like it processes in your brain or something, and you're able to play it. And I think that's like I think back to those moments and I'm like, damn, you know.
Yeah, that is such a good moment. I often find like if I'm really hammering away at something, like I'm doing a lot of I've got a bluegrass session to do next weekend, and so I've just been hammering away with a metronome, just picking, you know, bluegrass tunes, just flat picking. But like I find the more, not frustrated, but sort of like the more I tire myself out sort of in one day. So if I put like 2 hours in just like solidly just doing that, the next day like it's kind of proportional. So like sort of the more like tired out I get on that day, the next day sort of it sounds proportionally better as a result. Kind of like just you just sort of spend hours burning it into your brain, and then like it eventually gets there. But do you ever? I don't know if you guys find this as well. Like in terms of that, like I always find I have a very sort of short memory for like how frustrating the bit is that you're working towards, like with some sessions and stuff that I've done. It's kind of like when you're sort of really hammering away at something, it's really, really difficult. It feels amazing when you get it, and then because it feels so amazing, you sort of forget all the other stuff behind it, and you sort of like, obviously it makes it all worthwhile, and then sort of like you come back to do it the next time and it's kind of like, oh man, I forgot how frustrating it was trying to work a track out again, kind of thing. And it's sort of, you know, like once you do get one of those highs, it sort of like blurs everything else out again, and it's sort of like, oh, you know, just carry on doing this for ages, and then sort of like you get back to it the next day, and it's like, oh yeah, it's still like the grind's still there, sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think you know, that's it's always what's behind the scene, isn't it? That people don't see. Like if you see someone who's accomplished at a musical instrument, I mean, the hours that they've had to put in of you know, monotonous, you know, especially I think in a classical instrument like, you know, piano or classical piano or violin, the number of hours that person's had to put in, like playing scales, playing along to a metronome, you know, doing all these techniques is. But that's what leads to that high moment of being on stage or being super happy with your progress, and as you said, man, it makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, definitely does. So in terms of so obviously your website is thehappybluesman.com. Absolutely fantastic name. That kind of when you first called me, I checked it out and I was just sort of like, fantastic idea. Was that just even conceptually, it was brilliant.
Like did you find Aidan via Happy Bluesman, or was it like a listing? Or was it Aidan?
So I put a request
I'm just curious.
on. Yeah, it's all right. I never told you about this. So I put a request on bark.com for a guitar teacher, and then Aidan found me through that. I can't remember exactly what I put. Whether it must have been something that was that interested you, I suppose, enough to give me a call. But I said, you know, I was looking for a teacher that, you know, I was working as a professional musician. I was just looking to improve my lead electric guitar playing, I think, or something like that.
No, exactly, and I think you put all your socials in there because you know the majority of people who are looking to well, I think a lot of the people who are looking to learn guitar, and a lot of my students are like, you know, really starting from scratch. So sometimes it's the first time they've picked up a guitar. Sure. And with Leo, he put his links to his social media page. So I clicked on, and then I saw him doing this cover of Sound of Silence, and I love Simon Garfunkel.
Yeah, sure.
And I was like, not totally sure what I'm going to teach this guy, but because it was awesome, man. Like great singing, great guitar playing. I was like, wow, this is great. So no, that was it was cool, man.
That's interesting. I guess that's a very sort of unconventional way for a student to find a teacher, or vice versa, you know, in terms of like the student lists out what exactly they want to learn in a way, rather than like, I'm just going to play guitar, or there's this one specific teacher I want to get lessons out of, and I'm going to contact that person on Instagram or something and see if they're free. So I mean, I think it sort of goes back to like what we were talking about originally, you know, in terms of playing an instrument for a long period of time. You know, I think once you reach a certain level of, you know, beyond the basics, and when you can play something comfortably, or at least this is my experience for me personally, you know, you reach a point where you really want to like find your lane and then just absolutely ascend, you know, or just kill it in that one lane. So for me, it's like,
okay, blues guitar. How do I become the best possible blues guitarist that I can? And that's like my real big musical focus. So if ever I've sought out tuition in the past or whatever, it's always been like with that one thing in mind. Obviously, beginners, like real beginners, I guess, are going to have a much broader, set of things they're looking for. But yeah, for guys like us who maybe have been playing for a bit longer, when you want help, I guess probably it's on a more specific thing, because you've kind of a bit more dialed in on where you want to go with it, maybe.
Yeah, and
definitely.
I think it's totally. I feel like, I mean, I haven't really taught that much. I've taught a bit to like beginners and stuff, but that type of teaching, I feel like it's in a totally different category to like just picking up a guitar in terms of the way you teach it and what exactly you teach, right? Like if like at the beginning, if you're just getting into guitar, like for me as a 13-year-old, and all I wanted to do was learn Metallica, and then I had a guitar teacher when I first started out, and that really, really shaped what I listened to. Now reflecting back to meeting that teacher in terms of getting into more sort of jazz fusion-y stuff, or just like more soul and stuff, because that was what my teacher was into, and I went to them being like, hey, I want to learn like the entirety of Metallica's back catalog. and he was like, slow down a bit, and also like maybe diversify a bit as well. Whereas
so he teaches you the Chet Atkins version of Sandman as opposed to the
tricking me.
Oh man, did I tell you about that I had that with my piano teacher or what? So I similar to Johnny, I started on piano before I went on to guitar, and I had piano lessons for, I think it was 5 years, from year 7 to year 11. So it's until I left school to go to sixth form. And like I had the same thing where he was teaching me classical stuff, and I wanted to learn like How to Save a Life by the Fray, and in the end, like all the stuff that was like in the charts at the time. And it snapped one day, and I was just like, can you just give me something with like, I think I said like some emotion, please, or some feeling, because like all the classical stuff, because I couldn't read music very well, and like everything and everything he gave me, I'd work it out by ear and then play it back. And so he was like, you're not actually learning to read music. And I was just like, no, I'm not really sorry. So he was, so the stuff was still really basic. I was like, can you give me something with a bit of feeling, some emotion that I can, like, because I was sort of playing, stuff like by the Commodores, like Easy Let Sunday Morning. I was doing a lot of blues piano as well, which is obviously has a lot of kind of like feeling, and there's a lot of fun and like bounce to it, as opposed to going like da 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 da. And he gave me a funeral march for emotional stuff, like, and that was like his idea of, okay, I'll give him something emotional, like, I'll give him a funeral piece to play. Which is emotional, yes, but not quite the thing I was sort of talking about. And so we had like a bit of a parting of ways there. But I think it kind of it speaks to the point of like, I think I don't know if you find it with some of your students, that like it is so important to have like a connection musically, and sort of like you have to be on like a similar sort of wavelength to your students, because like you can have. You can have that way of teaching, sort of like, it's my way. I know exactly what I need to teach you to get you to to be better, but. Like, I think you have to have a level of sort of flexibility, and you also have to have sort of like, the personality to need to sort of like be on some sort of similar wavelength.
Yeah, 100%, man. And I mean, similar story to you, Johnny, really. Like I started guitar lessons when I was about 11 or 12. And the guy, my teacher was amazing, and he introduced me to all sorts of types of music and blues and some jazz stuff and fusion stuff, and kind of broadened my horizons. And I think depending on where you are in the journey, the musical journey, that's as big a part of it as anything, I think, really, because if you're just picking up the instrument and you don't really know much guitar-driven music, or where this music, where the guitar is really kind of shining as an instrument, then I think that's one of the greatest joys, is like sharing this with people, and then they hear it and they're like, wow, this is incredible. Like one of my students, he's such an awesome guy. He's a student at university, and he's from Kuwait. So he still plays the oud.
Wow, sure.
And he's grown up like all of his life listening to music from the Middle East, and playing kind of more sort of classical, traditional Arabic stuff on the oud. and he's come over to university, and he's just got massively into classic rock music. But it's it's like the first time he's ever really discovered it, because he's listened to so little of it. And he's just massively into AC/DC, and so I'm saying, oh man, like, check out Guns N' Roses, check out these guys, check out some of this Led Zeppelin stuff, and he's like really digging it, and it's just such a pleasure, man, to see someone discovering this for the first time, and like really, it's a whole different world of music out there. It's just awesome.
Yeah, I guess that's the whole joy of it. I mean, what was it like in terms of you discovering blues music? What sort of, or even just like guitar music in general, it doesn't have to be blues music in general, but what were the artists that really first inspired you at that pivotal moment, like the 13 to 18, I guess, to throw some numbers up there?
Oh man. So the first guy I really idolized which was actually way before I started playing guitar, was Buddy Holly.
Sure.
Oh, nice.
I just like fell in love with Buddy Holly. My parents my parents are amazing, and they like really, even though they don't play musical instruments themselves, they did an amazing job of like introducing us to lots of different music and classical music and all sorts of different stuff. And they had this Buddy Holly CD, and I just got so into Buddy Holly. So and I must have been like 5 or 6 years old. So I got really into Buddy Holly, and then Roy Orbison as well.
Oh yes.
Yeah, he's such a good singer, man. He's
amazing.
And then my dad is a big Dire Straits fan, a big like Mark Knopfler Dire Straits fan.
That explains it.
Sure.
So he was playing quite a lot of that. So I'd kind of already been introduced to some guys through my parents. My mum really likes the Eagles, and then they kind of started to get wind of me being into guitar and stuff. And then they bought me for Christmas Dark Side of the Moon.
Sure.
And
Nice.
And I remember like putting it on in my bedroom, and the first couple of songs are like a bit psychedelic and progressive and out there and stuff, and then it gets to the song Time, if you guys can recall it. And then I remember just sitting there and being like, okay, I'm into this. And then the guitar solo started, and I was just like, oh my God.
I
can still remember it so vividly, man. So then I got really, really, really into Pink Floyd, and they're still one of my like all-time favorite bands. So in terms of like, and then in school I was lucky enough to have mates who were really into music as well. So like one of my best mates loved Thin Lizzy. So like I went to see Thin Lizzy, obviously not with the original singer, but like a makeup of Thin Lizzy. And then I don't know, like I was just going so deep into it. Like I had one of those compilations. Yeah, exactly. I had like one of those compilation albums, like While My Guitar Gently Weeps or something. That's actually what it was called. And
sure.
And I would just listen to someone, and if I liked them, then I would just go and find that person. So like I remember hearing Lynyrd Skynyrd, and then I just got super into Lynyrd Skynyrd, and then obviously like Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, was like one of the first guys. And then I was lucky enough actually to go, again, my parents were super supportive in terms of like getting us to gigs and stuff. And I went to go and see a double bill with a guy called Gary Moore, who's like...
love him, man.
Oh, nice, man. Awesome. Yeah. Gary Moore's one of those, man, like... A lot of people love him and know him and love him, but some people not so much. But I went to see a double bill of Gary Moore was the support, and then BB King was the.
Oh my God!
BB King was the main act, and it was like BB King's like last tour. I think he then went on for like another 5 years afterwards. And then so that was where I started to get a little bit more from like the rock stuff to the blues.
Right. Cool.
So like Gary Moore, BB King, and then my parents had listened to some of the Eric Clapton stuff, but like more like the 80s Clapton.
Sure.
And then I kind of discovered like the 60s and 70s, like Cream and John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. Got really into that. And then at the same time, my guitar teacher was like, introducing me to Peter Green, like the guy who did the original Fleetwood Mac. And he was really, my guitar teacher was really into some fusion stuff as well, like Mahavishnu Orchestra and John McLaughlin and guys like that.
Yeah, of course.
So I kind of got a little bit into that. But it was just the blues that kind of stuck with me, like the B.B. King and all that sort of stuff. Stevie Ray Vaughan again. And that's kind of where I've been pretty much ever since.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I mean, it's funny. Like I sort of resonate a lot with the way you discovered it as well, in terms of like it just kind of goes on. Like you discover one artist, you like completely delve your learning space into that artist, like learning exactly how to play every single lick on the Loner by Gary Moore or something. But it's interesting to compare like how we like I don't know how old you are, Aidan. You don't have to disclose that, but I feel like it was sort of like the CD sort of era and computers are like iTunes is happening in terms of like iTunes was sort of a thing as well.
So I'm 29. So I don't know if similar-ish, maybe a bit older than you guys. But it was exactly that, man. It was the seed, like, we I remember getting like pocket money and stuff and Christmas money. And I remember a mate of mine getting loads of money for his birthday. And he was just like, right. And we went to Liverpool, which was like the nearest city to where we grew up. Sure. And he just spent like 150 quid on CDs. He bought like 10 Led Zeppelin CDs. Of course, which is just an experience, it makes us sound like, we're from the 70s, but whatever. But it's just an experience that people don't have now, isn't it, with streaming? You don't really go and buy CDs, or I don't anymore.
Yeah, it's funny because, sorry, you go.
I was going to say, like, there's like a finite element to it as well, I think. I mean, I grew up similarly on at least sort of like my formative musical years with the same sort of thing, sort of like from 11 to when I started getting sort of pocket money and having my own money, sort of being able to buy my own CDs, and then from CDs onto like LimeWire and FrostWire, sort of like the child of Napster, sort of before like streaming became sort of commonplace. But because it's finite and because you can't have everything as you can now, there's a desire to have it as a result. Like there are 12 songs in an album. You can only have 12 songs. You only have £5. What are you going to spend it on? And as a result, like you cherish it a lot more, And like I remember sitting for hours, like waiting for like, my FrostWire screen to buffer to get like one song that I'd heard off a TV show. So I was like, I need to have this song so I can hear it and understand it, And I think it does sort of, I don't know, it does seem to sort of, it speaks to like just hearing the way you're sort of able to kind of like, the way you grew up and sort of like you're able to sort of delve into it because you have like a closed off amount of it. Like if you've just got one CD, you can really delve into it. Whereas like if I look up like Stevie Ray Vaughan now on Spotify, you get the entire back catalogue of like 7 albums worth of stuff. And you're sort of like, it's a lot more to dive into as a result. And I think you've got to really kind of know what you're looking for now. Because like if I was to be like guitar music on Spotify now, if I was looking to start guitar now, it's just like, it's almost overwhelming. There's so much there, and it's pulling you in so many different directions. It kind of makes it, I'd say it feels more difficult now, at least, to sort of to have that level of like focus you almost need to kind of like get into someone.
Yeah, I think so, Mike. I mean, in a way, as a listener, I think as an artist, obviously, it's pretty clear that the streaming stuff isn't so good. But like as a listener, the choice that you have and the accessibility and the price of that I think is all pretty incredible. But I think you're absolutely right, man, in terms of you don't have that kind of shared experience. Like I remember, for example, as I said, getting into Lynyrd Skynyrd, and I didn't have a Lynyrd Skynyrd album. And I remember going around to a mate's house, and he had a Lynyrd Skynyrd LP that his dad had given him. Yeah. And we sat and listened to this Lynyrd Skynyrd LP, and I can remember being sat there and hearing this song for the first time, and being like, "Wow, this is just incredible." And this was like 20 years ago, and no, not 20 years, like 15, 16 years ago, and And it's that sort of shared experience, which doesn't feel quite the same if I'm like, hey, Leo, check this Spotify link out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's easier to digest and to listen to this new stuff. But as you said, you kind of have that little bit of the experience taken away, I suppose.
Yeah, it's sort of a bit double-edged, and you're always listening to the most popular stuff as well. I feel it's like finding the gems of like a random track 7 of this guitarist's album that's like that completely rocks your world is completely like, I feel like that's the experience that's a bit like lessened a bit. I mean, obviously you had like greatest hits and stuff like that, and I learned a lot of music off greatest hits. Like Gary Moore was off greatest hits, Clapton was off greatest hits and stuff like that, even Eagles obviously, and Queen. All these are like you can just buy a greatest hit CD and have a similar Spotify experience per se if you were to just go on someone's profile. So, but yeah, I guess it is a bit of a double-edged sword in terms of like not just the availability of the music, but just the process of consuming, embodying almost, and then put it, I guess, applying it to your playing or something like that.
Yeah, I also think, I mean, obviously we were too young to, well, LPs are coming back, aren't they? But like in terms of when LPs were first the big thing.
Yeah.
The experience of having an LP and even the CDs. Like I remember the CD, they would have, like the cover art, you'd open up, there'd be like a little book, sometimes with the lyrics in, some like with pictures of the band, and it would be like a real cool, I remember like reading through the book, just getting super into it. And obviously in the LPs, you've got all the LP artwork and all that sort of stuff. And it's a bit like having a book, isn't it, versus reading on your phone or reading on a Kindle or something like that. It's like you just miss that kind of physical. Man, I really want to, start a CD collection after this. I don't know.
No, it's so true, and it's like I went. You almost have to go backwards to kind of like to reverse engineer it now, because like obviously vinyls are making a comeback and you can still buy CDs, but it's kind of like you almost have to suspend your disbelief that Spotify exists now if you want to have that kind of experience, because like we've got a record player. We bought a record player for our new flat, and it's like it hooks up with the speakers and everything, but like everything we have on the record player, we can get on Spotify, faster and everything. And obviously when a record player gets to the end of a side, you have to like physically get up and switch it over and things. And that doesn't happen on Spotify, but at the same, but in order to have that sort of finite experience of having it and, being able to open up the sleeve, read the lyrics and everything, you've almost got to pretend that like Spotify is not there. And almost it's almost like, like the light bulb having been invented, but then sort of like still using matches, like in spite of it, to have that experience of like, to sort of feel like it's kind of the same.
I watched a video recently. There was like a clickbait title, but literally the title of the YouTube video was "Vinyl Sucks." And I was like, okay, I'm going to click on it. And he was like, and the whole premise of the video was that like vinyl sucks because it's actually not as good as digital music in terms of like, the whole faff of it, like being on a vinyl, like you lose like the compression, you lose a lot of the like just due to your setup from that to your ear. There's like multiple levels of ways where the music might lose quality per se. Like it might have a different vibe, but it will lose quality as a result. Whereas digital music is like perfect. Like your headphones might be crap, but like the process of getting it from the file to your ear is like less obstructed. But then obviously he sort of comes back around and says like, actually vinyl's great because it's physical, because it's tangible. You hold it, you listen to it in a different way. But I thought, that was an interesting comp. To, the whole experience of it.
Yeah, it is a very strange like. It's because like they have it's almost the imperfection of it almost makes it better in a way. And some like just like some of the vinyls that we've got, I've inherited them from my parents. Like they're nearly 50 years old, some of them now, from sort of the 1970s, and like they've got scratches on them and they skip in places, but it's kind of like, but they're your scratches and they're your skips, and it's kind of like all that stuff is, like that's part of your listening experience. And it's kind of like, I don't know, it just does seem to have that sort of like, there's just that there's a quality to it that like it's almost the fact that it's not quite perfect makes it almost nicer to listen to in a way. And it's like I'm curious as well, sort of like I guess in terms of that and sort of taking like sort of applying it to blues music and sort of having that. Like, I watched a really interesting video a while ago talking about guitar heroes, and they're sort of saying that, you know, guitar heroes don't really exist in the same way as they used to in the terms of like sort of all the guitar heroes that we think of are mostly from the 60s, 70s, 80s, you know, with the exception of people like John Mayer, Derek Trucks, sort of there are a few still left, but like they're not sort of in the charts in the same way as they used to be. And so like I was wondering sort of in terms of like, because you've mentioned a load of blues artists that you're a massive fan of, you know, and obviously a lot of them are from the 60s and 70s and 80s, kind of like, what do you think of the, if you have an opinion on it at all, sort of like the modern like blues guitar scene and sort of like how it's kind of, what do you think of it and how it's developed and stuff?
Well, I mean, you know, I think it, like in terms of the key difference to my mind, I think there are incredible guitar players in the modern scene. Like there are some guys I follow and bands I listen to and stuff who are just like amazing, you know, and I think if they'd been born, you know, 50 years earlier or 60 years earlier, they probably would be in that like guitar hero category. But I guess, you know, the people who've ascended to the guitar hero category have done so because that music was in the mainstream at that time, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
You know, like Pink Floyd, like Dark Side of the Moon was in the charts. You know, there's like a #1 album for, you know, a record-breaking number of weeks. The Eagles, you know, these guys who were playing the guitar. You know, so yeah. You know, I still love a lot of the modern blues stuff, and actually a lot of the music that I listen to is kind of like modern blues and blues rock. But I guess I only know about it maybe because I'm really seeking it out. Like these are not going to be household names. Obviously for most people, but for people who are into guitar and into blues music, you know, yeah, I still think the scene is going pretty strong, man. And I think the fact that you know, guys like John, as you mentioned, John Mayer, Derek Trucks, Gary Clark Jr. would be another one. Joe Bonamassa. You know, these guys are you know, really skilled guitar players. I mean, John Mayer is the standout one, really, because I went to a John Mayer concert last year for my birthday, and my girlfriend bought me tickets to my birthday, which was awesome. And,
which one was it?
It was in London, October the 14th, 15th, something like that.
We're probably at the same time.
I think we were there.
We were probably all there at the same time.
Yeah.
Nice. But you know, my experience with that concert was like, there were groups of teenage girls who'd gone there together. There were couples, there were people in middle age, and then there were like groups of 60, 70-year-old guys who'd gone together. You know, because he is appealing with his poppier stuff, you know, to the people who like more pop music. He's an incredible guitar player with awesome tone. So he's appealing to guys like me who just want to look at his hands when he's doing his vibrato and everything and geek out on that. You know, so it's quite an amazing experience. You know, that I can go with my girlfriend, for example. She's not a guitar player. She's not into blues. And we can enjoy the same concert, you know. So guys who are doing that sort of stuff and putting the guitar back at the center of the music, you know, Gary Clark Jr., Derek Trucks again, and they're pulling in big crowds, man. They're, you know, they're filling.
I think Trucks sold out the Wembley Arena with his band, to Tedeschi Trucks band this year.
Yeah, I was at that gig as well.
Oh, no way.
He's like Derek Trucks to me, man. Is I think he's like probably like top 5 of my favorite guitarists. I just think he's incredible.
Yeah, man. There's that video of you've probably seen it because I feel like you've mentioned all 3 artists, but there's John Mayer, Derek Trucks, and BB King.
Yeah.
At this BB King gig. And John Mayer plays like a solo. It's pretty cool. It's John Mayer. And then Derek Trucks comes in, and like I legit, the first time I watched that video, I was like tearing up just from this dude playing like a slide blues solo. And BB King just introduces him. You see John Mayer like on the side just being like,
Yeah.
And it's the most incredible video. I mean, if you haven't seen it, I'll send it to you right after this. But it's,
no, I've seen it, man. I've seen it, but then I felt a bit bad for John Mayer because everyone's trashing him in the comments, like, man, you know, you got so upstaged and all that sort of stuff. But it's not a competition, man. But yeah, it just shows you the depth of skill that you know that Derek Trucks has. Yeah, is pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I think the online community does have a guitar scene right now. It's maybe not something that like tops a chart or anything, or like obviously on like a Billboard level or something like that. And I feel like there is a really awesome sort of community of musicians, whatever niche you're into, and maybe it doesn't like earn everyone like money just for making that type of music, but the sort of the sharing of the experiences between, even just like not from like a fan to the artist level, but like even like artists sharing between artists, and then maybe producing podcasts of like guitar playing experiences for other people to consume. There's like a whole different way to consume guitar music right now, if we're honing in on that sort of or blues guitar music almost. I think, I mean, obviously lockdown changes everything, but then something's come out. Like I'm listening to this podcast, this guy called Eric Krasno, who's this amazing blues player who played with like Soul Live and Lettuce, like these blues influenced bands. But he got like artists like John Mayer and Derek Trucks to come on their podcast and talk about their music experiences and stuff. That's like a completely different like experience from like learning guitar music in the 2000s, right?
I mean, man, there's a guy a modern blues guy that I love called Philip Says, and he's just like this. He seems like a super nice, chilled out Canadian guy, but on the guitar, he is an absolute savage. He's just so fast, so like just brutal, man. Really, really cool. And I think I was watching an interview with him, and he said something like, "Man, like, you know, when I was learning guitar in the 80s or whatever, you know, like we had like a VHS tape that this one guy produced telling you how to like play blues guitar solos."
Yeah.
and then, you know, and then like 15 years later or whatever, like tab websites were just like, I think like my mate had Power Tab. I didn't have anything. So I would like go around to his house and use his Power Tab or whatever. And you know, now there's like website like platforms where, you know, these modern guitar players are sharing their lessons basically, and you know, telling you how to play the guitar, which is it's you know, so as much as technology has changed the way we consume music, there are truly amazing things to have come out of it, I think, for people who are into this and who want to learn and, you know, want to know more about it and stuff like that.
Yeah, like people can make entire livings from that. Like some of the people that I follow, like the maybe not just in the blues scene, but just musicians in general. You can set up an online school, and and you can, yeah. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of people to make something of it, I think. And then, but yeah, I guess that's different from like a platform where like there's like a platform called like Jamplay. I think Fender's sort of hopped on that sort of little niche, and they've got some interesting content. I think it's like it's more aimed for beginners or people starting up. But yeah, I'm sort of curious. Like this is just a general thought of what sort of guitar players this sort of online teaching will produce. Does it produce the same type of guitar player, do we think? Or is there going to be a generation of like completely different guitar players, you know, that maybe get into different types of stuff? I mean, it's a bit of an abstract question, but what do you guys think? Or is that too like unknown, you know?
I don't know, man. I mean,
yeah.
My guess would be, you know, like in the 60s and the 70s, a lot of the guys it was kind of less, what's the word? They had less of a theoretical background, and it was more just like jumping in, learning on the road, and cracking on with it type thing. And then like in the 80s, you had guys like Joe Satriani who were super, into their theory. And then there was almost like a whole generation of guitar players who were like classically trained, but then could shred.
Yeah.
You would think, at least I would think that you'd have a movement more towards that type of thing, right? It's like people who are kind of have a better understanding of music theory and or maybe are more technical as players, because there is all this information out there, and if you can jump on and buy a music theory for guitar course for like $20 or whatever, you would think. But I don't know. That's just my best guess. Who knows, man?
Yeah. It's interesting because now you can learn from. Okay, maybe Joe Satriani hasn't done a guitar course, but you can learn from Paul Gilbert.
Yeah, I was about to say Paul Gilbert's done one. Yeah,
you can learn from like so many different types of guitarists, and I guess they are. I don't want to call them the gatekeepers, but then they sort of are. If you're a teacher, that's your responsibility. You have to, if you're teaching, you're passing on your playing style to someone else, like Steve Vai, like getting lessons from Joe Satriani, which is an amazing thought to imagine. But yeah, it's like, and I guess there's like because you can learn how to be an amazing blues guitar player in your bedroom. Like, does that change? Yeah, it's like, I'm interested to see how that changes the style of guitar compared to someone where the only place where they could learn guitar is from a couple of teachers in their area, or going to like a blues jam or something like that, which obviously you can still do nowadays. But a lot of those people are now like bedroom learned internet guitarists,
Yeah. I'm curious. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
I'm curious whether it might, like, I think because it's become so diversified now, and there are so many different online courses, and there are so many directions and things you can learn. Whereas obviously previously, as you said, there might be 2 guitar teachers in your town, and in your county, or in your entire state, where they'll teach you what you want to learn. Whether it will just diversify, because like I've done a little bit of teaching, and like a lot of people say, I want to learn Ed Sheeran songs, and so like a lot of people aren't necessarily. It depends what you're interested in now, I think. So if you're interested in pop songs, for example, and learning sort of what acoustic guitar is in the charts, you might not necessarily be as down on musical theory as you were if you were to discover someone, if you were specifically wanting to learn blues guitar or jazz, for example, or sort of neo soul guitar or something like that. So I think it would vary depending on what you started with, I guess, and sort of how far you wanted to go with it as well, potentially.
I think that's bang on, man. And what I was just going to say is, I wonder whether there might almost be actually thinking about it like an adverse effect, which would be there's so much out there that people end up not just kind of sticking on one methodology or not just following, just not following a course to the end, basically, because it's not like, I've bought this one DVD and it cost me 20 quid and, I'm going to have to wait 6 weeks for the next one to arrive if I change my mind. It's like, okay, well, I'm not really digging this course, so I'll just jump over to this one. It'd be interesting to see whether that's a potentially adverse side effect. I don't know.
Pulled in too many directions, I guess.
Potentially.
Yeah, I'm very guilty of doing that. I've bought sort of like 2 or 3 guitar courses in my time, and sort of like, just like, because you can now, can't you? I think like, whereas before, I feel
like you should as well, like at least try it.
Definitely. Like you should definitely try it. And if you don't like it, change it. But like, I think you can do things on a whim a lot more than you used to be able to. I think like if you wanted to have guitar lessons, you had to, want it enough to go and see someone in person and be like, I want guitar lessons. Whereas now you can buy an online course, as you say, for like 20 quid and like sort of maybe give it a go, like try a couple of lessons and be like, not really for me. Whereas like, I think I think the propensity to have a lot more sort of casual guitar players might be a result of it as well. Sort of people who are, by all means good, and sort of like, they can, potentially make a living out of it, but sort of like the the same like level of obsession sort of like that you need to sort of get to the level of someone like Joe Satriani or Steve Vai or something like that. Maybe like if Steve Vai had like, maybe if, like, for example, if Steve Vai had like, you know, 7 or 8 guitar courses to choose from, would he be Steve Vai, or would he just have been like, well, like, I'm not quite sure. You know, he might have just you know, been an average, you know. I'm always curious with that, like, you know, if the guitar legends had grown up like in the music scene of today, like whether the same thing would have happened, or whether you know, they would have just completely fallen in love with it and still be like, would John Mayer still be John Mayer if he started now, as opposed to like in the 90s, for example, you know, with everything else that's kind of going on.
I'm just imagining Steve Vai loading up, like, you know, remember those like guitar DVD? Yeah, there's like how to sound like every single guitarist. I don't remember the brand, but it was like, it had like a yellow, like the text was yellow on the side.
Oh man, I had so many of these DVDs.
Yeah.
What were they called? It was like Jam something or Fret something. I don't know.
Is it Fretboard Journal?
Jam or Fret in there.
Yeah. I don't remember, but yeah, those things are amazing.
They were, man. Yeah, they were. They were awesome.
Yeah, and I guess the gears all changed now as well. You know, there's so many different budget types of ways to get into gear to be able to play blues music. You don't even necessarily need to have an amp to be able to play now. You can just play through your laptop or your headphones, and obviously it's very, very different, but it's I don't think it's a barrier, because then you could always have just bought an amp and played guitar if music technology hadn't happened the way exactly it has now. But that also changes the type of guitars, and they like you have larger access to different types of tones, and maybe that opens up more avenues to learning guitar, you know.
I don't know. I mean, I'm a bit of a renegade on this point, but I'm in two minds about the gear thing, to be honest. Because on the one hand, I feel like, you know, you want to have a tone that inspires you and that gets you wanting to play the guitar, and you want to have a guitar that feels good in your hands and that you feel excited to play, right? Because if you don't have those things, then it's like, you know, it's inevitably taking a bit of the shine off the experience. But you know, I don't know, like, I just have so many conversations with guys and who I feel are really dedicating the vast majority of their free time on the hobby of playing guitar, looking at and considering like gear and making like very niche changes, you know, to like their pedal board or like the gauge of their strings, or maybe the gauge of the strings is less niche, but, you know, like making these kind of very small changes. And to me, like, that is part of the fun, and I get it, and it makes total sense, and it can have a profound impact on your musical experience. But I also just think like it's just so much more rewarding and so much more fun. I almost like the approach I take with myself is like, I only allow, and this is a bit masochistic maybe, but I only allow myself to buy new gear if I feel I've like earned the gear, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm like, right, I'm going to practice really hard. I'm going to really go for this. Like, I'm going to dedicate X amount of time. And then when I buy this new pedal, it's going to be awesome, because I'm going to be really happy with my playing. Because I've done the opposite. Like, I've bought gear, I've bought expensive gear, and then I've been frustrated with the way I'm playing. And I'm like, man, this is no fun. You know, this is no fun for me. Like, so I you know, as I said, maybe it's a bit controversial, but I sometimes wonder whether, you know, all of the thousands of different pedals and, you know, software and blah, 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 sometimes distracts people from just like learning, you know, just like playing the guitar basically, and, you know, just like woodshedding, like putting the hours in and just getting the job done. I don't know what I don't know if you guys share that opinion, or if you think I'm way off piste.
I'm curious to see where you're on this one, actually, Johnny.
I mean, it's. I mean,
an argument live on the podcast.
Yeah, I don't consider myself a gearhead per se, and I don't like buy things just for the sake of it, you know, or just thinking. like it is, I guess when you buy something, you buy it for a certain reason. You buy it because you want to chase a certain type of tone, and you're not just buying it for like just because you can or you think it will solve something. I think that's the wrong way to buy. It should always add something, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I sort of raised that point just in terms of, just in terms of the process, like how do you, because you can achieve very similar things, and whether I don't know, I guess just don't get distracted, I guess that's the yeah, I mean, I'm curious what sort of like what's your gear sitch like in terms of like what guitars were you using, what to learn the blues, and how did that inspire you? What inspired you to pick up certain types of guitar?
It's going to be like a massive pedalboard rundown now. Having said that intro, I've got
rig
all these
rundown.
pedals. Like,
Yeah, so I've just ranted about how much I hate gear. Here's my 20 pedals.
I mean, you gotta. I mean, even if you have one guitar, like, why do you pick that guitar or a couple guitars? You know.
Yeah, sure, man, sure. Yeah, so to be honest, I was pretty ignorant about gear for a long time, actually. So like the first proper electric guitar I had was like a PRS Santana SE. So it was like one of the entry level PRS guitars, but it was awesome. Not really a blues thing at all. More of like a modern-y, rocky type thing. Really cool. And I played that for a while, and then I saved up loads of money, and well, not loads of money, but I saved up a bit of money when I was working as a teenager, and I decided that I was going to buy a decent guitar, and I wanted to buy it in America because of the exchange rate. So I went to like a guitar center over there, and I really wanted an Olympic white Strat because I'd seen Jimi Hendrix play one at Woodstock, and I was just like, yeah, man, that's my guitar type thing. And I played one, and I don't know why, I just didn't really like it very much. I don't know if it was that model or whatever. Then I ended up getting a Telecaster instead, which was really cool. Played that for a while, and then that was when I started to get more and more into like tone. And at that time, I had a digital modeling amp, and I was always a bit dissatisfied with like the tone and Stevie Ray Vaughan, like that Stevie Ray Vaughan, John Mayer, Derek Trucks thing, which is like basically clean, but with a little like crunch in it, like just like a warm,
bit of spice.
like exactly, just like a warm, slightly distorting kind of sound. And then I sold my Telecaster and bought my Strat, which is this thing here. And that was because like all my guitar heroes are either Strat or Gibson Les Paul players. So, the Gibson Les Paul, at least the ones I've played, are like really big, and the neck's too big for my hands, and they're just heavy. And so I went with the Strat to get that sound. I love the Strat, man. It's just like, I love my guitar so much. It's just awesome. So that was like, my kind of, I did go and get a guitar I really wanted there. And then the thing with amps has always been a bit of a challenge for me because I was living in London in an apartment. So I was always buying these amps and they were always too loud, and I could never get them to the point where they were starting to like break up a little bit into that nice sound.
Yeah, the brown
So it was always exactly. It was always just blasting, clean, like headroomy type thing. And so I did for a while. I had a Mesa Boogie Texas Lone Star, which is like this really nice amp, but it was quite big. So that's gone. At the minute, I'm actually just running my guitar into software. So this thing called Positive Grid Bias FX 2, which actually is like really, for the job it does, it's decent. It's not. I mean, I'm in the market for an amp, but like I want to get a real amp, and I've got some pedals, but obviously not using them at the minute. So I really want a nice amp. I'm actually looking at these amps called Milkman amps, which is ones that John Mayer used. So that's kind of he endorsed them amongst some other guys. So I'm just running this software thing, which is which is fine, man. To be honest, for what it does, I mean,
Good for
and
teaching,
for,
I guess. If you're teaching via Zoom, like you can just run that stuff
straight through the laptop.
into-
exactly, and like for a lot of guys who are playing but not playing super seriously or whatever, I would say that's an amazing option because you can buy your little audio interface for like 100 quid. The software cost me like 100 quid, 150. So for 250 quid, you get all of these presets and access to an online thing where you can download sound like Slash or sound like David Gilmour or whatever. And it can be a lot of fun as well. And you just put your headphones in and get get quite decent tones. So it's not exactly like, well, obviously not my perfect rig, but for now it's kind of doing the job. And also, to be honest, I'm sort of in one of those quite intense woodshedding periods where I'm just like,
Sure.
get better, earn the gear type thing.
You gotta earn that. Just earn that, like F off, like vintage Fender Tweed.
Exactly, man. If I'm gonna go and buy a boutique amp, I don't want to embarrass myself in the guitar store. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What about you guys? Have you got? Well, I can see a few basses in the background and stuff. Like, what sort of are you? You're quite into gear, Johnny?
I mean, not necessarily. I don't know why I've been set up this way, but I just got. I mean, it's just because I play multiple instruments that I have more things, and I mean, there's a billion different guitars that I want. I like in terms of electric guitars, I only really have two, and I don't play one of them. I have my Strat, and then I have another like Parker, which I first started on. Just like Parker's like another random brand, but they got like a weird body shape. I mean, in terms of guitars, I'm sort of in a hunt for that sort of like a different type of tone right now. I'm really inspired by a lot of like semi-hollow players right now. So that's like that sort of, and also like I feel like you can't really completely replace a humbucker sound with a single coil. It's like, it's a different thing. So, currently I'm looking for that humbucker guitar that I don't have.
Well, they have a lot of like coil tap, like they have a lot of coil tap single ones, where they basically you like the pot itself, you tap it and then you get like it has a humbucker and a single coil, and you can go between the two if you want to, but like it's still not, it doesn't quite resonate in the same way, does it, as like a solid buddy. Yeah. But then in terms of that, I've always been a Strat guy. And in terms of bass, I have different types of basses just because I want them for different types of tones. To access things like jazz bass sounds completely different from a P bass, completely different to like an active sounding 5-string. So I've got those in my arsenal to cross different types of genres because I'm a bit of like a genre. What's the word? Whore. No, sorry. Like a hopper. Let's just say hopper. Yeah. We'll do for now. And
that makes sense, man. I mean, in terms of what I was saying about the gear before, it's obviously different horses for courses. Like, if I'm just looking for an off clean blues tone, my gear setup will be way less comprehensive than yours. If you're gigging in a function band, you've got to do like 80s pop one night and then Motown the next and then classic rock which I'm guessing is kind of a little bit of what's going on. You need a lot more different available sounds for that, don't you? That's definitely the case.
There's one guitar I found recently which was quite an interesting concept, which is the guitarist for Maroon 5. His name's James Valentine. He's recently he basically wanted to design a signature guitar that could get him through the entirety of the Maroon 5 set, because there's a lot of different genres and guitar tones, and he just wanted to bring one guitar with him to be able to get from like the Songs of Jane type to like the more really weird like modern pop trash stuff basically. And he made this guitar with Ernie Ball, Music Man, and it's got like a single coil, like a humbucker. There's like a billion different types of tones and coil tapping things, and that's sort of super interesting for me now, because it's like and it's interesting because he designed that guitar for the Maroon 5 set, but I was listening to a podcast recently of him talking about it, and he's seeing it pop up in a lot of different other scenes in terms of that specific guitar, like that are completely unrelated to Maroon 5 or anything to do with that. Like a lot of neo soul, jazz, R&B players would start buying it and then tagging him, being like, "I'm playing the Valentine guitar now." I thought that the versatility of that instrument was super cool, and
I think it's king for function stuff, isn't it? I think, or if you're playing a wide
that's what I
variety
wanted
of
to
stuff,
circle back around to.
It really helps. I mean, like the function band that we run, just like if you want to be in a function band nowadays, like, because there's such a breadth of stuff you have to be able to play, like you need to have. Be it with a versatile guitar, or be it with a versatile pedal board, you need to be able to go from sort of the 60s kind of like, what's the word, like SM57 recorded sort of like mic kind of tone, all the way to sort of like the super compressed modern stuff, and like you need something that's going to get you through all of that, sort of one way or another. But like I think I'm still, despite that, like I think I've become sort of like a bit of a reluctant. I'm still nowhere near a gearhead, but sort of like just reluctantly sort of been dragged kicking and screaming into the world of it, just like the pure necessity more than anything, sort of like because you need to sound a certain way. But like I still do kind of subscribe to the, like most of it comes from your hands, and I'd rather be able to, like for example, like you can have like a volume, like the sort of the pedal control sort of volume thing. Like I'd much rather do it, like via my like little finger on the volume pedal instead, sort of thing. Sort of like the most I can do with my hand, I'd rather do that. And then if I actually have to have a pedal, then like I'll use it kind of thing. But it's sort of like, yeah, it's an interesting, wasn't it? So because it does depend what you're sort of being asked to do, in terms of like, be it function stuff, be it solo stuff, like. But like I was going to ask, sort of like in terms of sort of like ideal gear then, or sort of like the ideal sort of like setup for you, sort of like if there was, like if money were no option, sort of like what would be the like like your sort of the dream guitar you get, sort of like the dream amp, and then like the dream like pedal setup, sort of to give you the tone that you'd like.
Okay, I have spent much time deliberating this. No, because I mean, as much as I was sort of slagging off gear before, no, it's not. Gear is important, and it's part of the fun of being a guitar player or a musician. It's like looking up gear, and I write about it loads on my website. Different gears to use, but I just think I think it's fun when you can combine that gear with a sense of like, oh, I'm really progressing as well. It's not just like my pedal board that's progressing. It's like my skill as a musician. And when the two come together and you have that sweet spot, I think is where it really kicks off. In terms of my ideal stuff, so I mean, I think I'm on a similar vibe to you, Johnny. Like, I love the semi-hollow bodied, like BB King, like the Gibson ES335, that type of thing. Love that. Like just, and Eric Clapton played one with Cream for a bit, and it's like just a real, I think it's just a guitar that can do so much, like jazz, blues, rock. It just seems like such a versatile guitar. So I would get some sort of Gibson hollow body, I think, like an ES335 probably.
Sure.
So I already have my Strat, super happy with that. I get a Gibson ES335. And then in terms of guitar, I probably, I don't know how familiar you guys are with Rory Gallagher.
Yes.
I saw him.
Yes,
I saw your article about him on the website.
Okay, yeah. So Rory Gallagher, but he's like one of my favorite guitar players, and he was a Strat guy.
Sure.
But he had a Telly that he played for slide, and because the Telly's got that kind of like sizzly, like that kind of spanky country thing going on, I think it has that kind of sharp slide guitar sound. So I would buy a custom shop Telly for slide, and then
you almost need like the three. You need like the holy trinity of like you need a Strat, you need a Gibson, you need a Telly, like just to get the breadth.
Man. And then I would get some, I would get some clean like kind of amp that I could then put pedals in front of. So like a Milkman would be, is an amazing boutique, or like Tone King would be another. I would go down like the boutique route for amps. And I think, that is the route I will go down with amps, and I'll just save up for it and stuff, because I think the quality of the amp that you have is fundamental to your tone. That's my feeling. I think you can play a cheap guitar into a really good amp and sound awesome. I think if you do it the other way around, I think your tone will be
an uphill battle.
Suffer. Yeah, that's my opinion. And then on the pedals, man, I just get like some low medium gain overdrive and boost stuff, like a Klon style pedal. I've got the pedal called the Duelist, which is like a tube screamer on one side and a blues breaker on the other.
Oh, nice!
That's awesome. That's an amazing pedal, man. So I'd run that still. I'd get a wah pedal. Just like the classic blues rock thing, man. Basically, would be my setup.
Man.
Good day. Good day. I have a good time daydreaming about that.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
I'm similarly pretty happy with my Fender at the moment, my Strat. If I can convince myself I deserve one, I might get, because it's only a Mexican standard. So if I could save up and maybe get American standard, or I might sort of PRS Silver Sky it and sort of just go full John Mayer and go for one of those, because just hearing the way he makes it sound is absolutely amazing. So I'd be tempted to get that sort of thing, especially for the stuff that I like playing. And then in terms of pedals, I'm because I've never been into them that much. Kind of even before I got my I have a Line 6 Helix sort of like pedal effects board, which sort of does everything. But before that, I was going through I had a tube screamer. I had one of the TS 808s, sort of one of the 80s remake ones, sort of very, very Steve Ray Vaughan. And so I think in terms of gear, sort of I'd probably keep it quite simple in that. So a bit of a clean boost, still have one of those tube screamers. If I could get an actual 80s one, that'd be amazing. Wah pedal, sort of I'd be generally quite happy with that sort of thing. And there was a bit of overdrive as well to give it a bit of for a bit more boost. And then in terms of amps, I don't know, man. If I could get hold of a 2-Rock, it'd be amazing. But obviously, again, they come along like once in a blue moon. They get snapped up for hundreds of thousands of pounds. But sort of for the bluesy kind of tone that I really like, that'd be the sort of thing I'd go for. Obviously, for function stuff, it's a bit different. But for original stuff, that'd be how I'd love to be able to sound. What about you? What about you, Johnny? I'm quite curious.
Well, if money was no object at all, I think, and my overall ethos would be old instruments through new amps. I think in general, I think if I could pick any instrument, guitar wise or bass wise, I'd definitely go down the vintage route, and just to try it out and see that sort of 60s Fender period, where before they got sold off into that sort of the mass manufacturing route, where they were designing a lot of those guitars by hand in the US. That those cost so much right now, these days, or if you don't know that it costs a lot, those are the golden.
It's the guitar influence, the equivalent of a Stradivarius or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sort of single handmade stuff that's sort of that's been kept for years.
Exactly, where the wood of the neck is sort of just going, just going black,
Yeah. So that specific tree, load in 1966, specifically the density of the wood or whatever, had a different sound to 1967 or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many of those tiny factors that make a difference to the tone for some reason.
But
then in terms of the new amps, I think I've had a lot of great experience with sort of I don't own any, but in terms of trying them out in stores, there's this amp brand called Supro, and I played it in a Guitar Center in the US, and I just picked up a random guitar and started playing through it, and it just, everything made sense. Just from in terms of exactly what I wanted out of my tone at that moment. And I'm really annoyed that I didn't note down exactly what I was playing through at that moment. But even with bass amps, the new Aguilar stuff is I don't know, it feels like I don't want the amp to malfunction, and if it's newer, then it will hold up a bit better in terms of there's so many factors. Whereas with the instrument stuff, the vintage stuff really brings out a different type of tone. But I mean, vintage versus modern is that's another argument for another day. But
yeah, but I think it's the fact that there was so many. Because the manufacturing process was different, there were idiosyncrasies. So every Gibson Les Paul that was made in 1959 was a little bit different from the other one. So it's like they each have this individual character, and I mean, man, they cost hundreds of thousands of pounds, don't they? But if you could get your hands on one and have a go, it would just be incredible. I think it would be such an experience.
Yeah, even just half an hour on one would be great.
Yeah.
It'd be a great 30 minutes.
I don't know, just walk into a vintage guitar shop wearing a really nice suit. And then No, I'm kidding. That would be harsh on the guys.
Yeah. Definitely worth a try maybe at some point. Oh man. Well, it's been amazing to have you on the podcast, man. Like, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure to actually chat to you, sort of like not in a sort of lesson setting as well, which has been really, really cool, and sort of hear a bit more about you, as a player and sort of influences and stuff.
Oh, guys, thank you very much for having me on. Yeah, it's just such a pleasure to talk to guys, who care about music, are passionate about it, like the same stuff, want to talk gear. It's awesome. So no, thank you very much.
Yeah, man. I mean, sort of what's I guess what's sort of in the future for you in terms of, are you going to just keep running this website and the teaching route? Is that sort of the short-term, long-term goal? To be honest, as it happens, things with the website are going really well. Like, it seems that people are really enjoying the content on there and stuff, which is great. And I'm hopeful really that it seems so far that there's enough guys and aspiring guitar players who kind of just want the blues and the blues rock thing. So my kind of real aspiration is to grow that into more of a kind of online community and have videos and a blues related podcast and kind of have all of those materials that you have on a lot of those other websites that we were talking about before, but just specifically aimed at blues and blues rock, basically. So that's my kind of ultimate aim, basically, is just to keep growing that and turn it into a real resource for people who like this style of music. Obviously continue teaching in the meantime and see where it all goes, basically. That's awesome. I guess, it's awesome to have a niche and something to focus on, I guess. Like that you don't have to be too distracted by having to cover loads of different types of things like we do on this podcast for some reason.
Well, I mean, it's tricky, man, isn't it? Because, there is so much amazing music out there, and there's so much amazing music that you can learn and get involved with. And I think that must be one of the pleasures of what you guys do in the function band stuff is like, one night you're playing Motown, the next you're playing 80s pop, the next you're playing, whatever. And you can engage with all that fun music and different music. But I suppose it's a question, isn't it, of whether you just dip into a bit of everything, or whether you just think, right, I just want to do this one kind of niche really, really well. And I think for me that I felt very empowered when I decided actually blues guitar is like what I'm going to focus on.
Sure.
I had this moment where I was like, wow, man, I'm just I'm learning this acoustic intro. I'm learning this heavy metal solo. What's happening here? I'm not doing anything well. And then I just thought, actually, what is the one thing that I really, really care about musically? And I was like, okay, that's and that for me has been awesome. But I guess it's everyone's different, aren't they? So it's not going to be the approach that works for everyone.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is a cool way to sum up like a lot of the things that we discussed. Actually, to be fair,
yeah, definitely.
Like focus sometimes, but I guess not other times.
Well, I'm glad to have left the listeners with that profound, that deeply profound message.
Words to live by. Focus sometimes, don't focus other times. Happybluesman.com. Thank you so much for tuning into Sonic Bytes. If you liked what you heard, drop us a like or follow us on Spotify, Anchor FM, or wherever you get your podcasts, or drop us a comment on YouTube at Leo Kelly G Music, Instagram at Sonic Bytes, or Twitter at Sonic Bytes Pod. More episodes coming very soon. Stay tuned.